Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
You spoke about traveling from doubt to the shattering of illusion or delusion. Is there a danger of cynicism of too many of those illusions?
Well, I'm not really talking about the shattering of illusion. We would say more that we're going from some condition where we have less access to wisdom and knowledge to where we have more access. And that kind of answers your question, because when we have more access through our direct senses, our perceptions, about how things actually are, even though it might be very painful to have that realization, we feel grateful for it. If we're having a really full realization of the way something actually is, we're not going to mourn our delusions. So cynicism is kind of like we're still mourning the delusionary state we were in, right? But if we're talking about this kind of practice and how we approach that kind of stripping of way of ignorance, then yes, it's painful, but we're not going to regret it. We're not going to feel cynicism, because it's like, okay, now we can go on. We're more skillful. So for instance, just in a very ordinary way, at some point after the first or during the first Trump presidency, I realized that I was still harboring this idea that we had a democracy. And at some point I realized that we don't have one, and we never really have one. And that was incredibly painful for me to realize. It actually was very painful. But I'm grateful, because now I can be more skillful. Now I know the real deal. And I could be more skillful in my approaches to helping us to create a better society. If I was still under the illusion that we had this wonderful democracy, and the old school Democrats always like, we're going to go back to the better world. Better for who, So knowing that, I can now say, okay, we need to do something different. We have to embody real democracy. We never had it. How can we embody that? Or is that what we want? Do we want something else? I couldn't ask that question if I was still under the impression that we had a democracy before and it got ruined and now we have to go back to it. I would be very much less skillful if that's what I still thought. So there's a sense of the painfulness of that kind of stripped down, but also gratitude. Okay, finally, I'm seeing things more clearly and I can move forward with more clarity and skill.
I read your post on that true dream you had about being an infant. And I think I've just been feeling a lot of that heartbreak recently, of like what you're talking about, where how you kind of have to hold all things at once. And I just wanted to hear you speak a little bit more about how to do that more skillfully.
A really good way to have more digestive capacity or more holding capacity of all this pain and fear and stuff that is going on, uncertainty, is to experience it without being attached to being a person who's experiencing it. What I mean is, don't make your feelings of distress your whole personality, as they like to say now, which is another way of saying don't be attached to a persona of somebody who feels things really deeply and who feels other people's pain and who's overwhelmed. That will actually cause you to be more exhausted. The effort of promoting that personality and demonstrating how caring you are to everyone is exhausting. The only thing that occurs to me is that if we can just honestly feel what we feel and not make it our brand, then it becomes easier to hold and to digest more. We're not wasting as much energy proving to everybody how wonderfully feelingful we are. the other thing I guess I would say is that I'm pretty amazed at how much I've been able to witness what's going on and feel what's going on over almost 2 years now of daily streams of absolutely mangled and decimated people coming on my screen every single day. And yet last week I had like 3 or 4 days where I just really felt down. But it was the first time in almost 2 years where I felt like really depressed and overwhelmed by this. And I was just surprised I hadn't felt it sooner, really, frankly. But, when that happens, it's okay. We don't have to try to fix it. We just let it happen and take a break if we need to take a break and go on. I think another thing that happens in our culture is we think we have to fix bad feelings or we have to fix feeling overwhelmed. I mean, could it be any more natural to be overwhelmed in the situation that we're in now with everything going on in the world, in our own country, the crazy people in charge of our country? Could there be any more appropriate response than feeling overwhelmed? So I just don't think we should work hard to feel other than we actually feel, or work hard to make other people think certain things about us because feelingfulness is our new brand. Empathy is our brand or something. I think we should just be really simple about it and just feel what we feel and rest when we rest and take in as much as we can and recognize that, this is weird to say, but I really think experiencing all of this is an unbelievably unique opportunity for many of us to grow, to become more open-hearted, to make more connections between ourselves and other people. I just feel like there's a huge shift happening involving millions of people around the world, and Gaza is at the center of it. And now there's many other things happening too, but Gaza's sort of where it's all radiating out from. As painful as it is, and as much as I wish this were not happening, and we had this golden utopian society where everybody treated everyone in the land and the animals with absolute respect and beautiful behavior, given that this is what actually is happening now, not that, but this, I feel incredibly privileged to be experiencing it. To be experiencing this level of destructiveness and to be able to see how we humans actually are, not have any illusions about that. And I feel incredibly privileged. Take it as you will.
What you're talking about, holding it lightly in a way, but very deeply when you zoom out and feel what's happening globally. To me, it feels like a microcosmic kind of relationship between my own personal experience of how you can tap into that, saying oh, there's also a lot of joy still too, and I can feel that as well.
And even people living in Gaza are trying to communicate that to us. Alongside the videos and photographs and audio recordings of people that are being murdered in a genocide and people losing their children and children losing their parents and all of the absolute trauma happening, they're also very much trying to retain some of the joy of their lives and be creative and play music and make art. And they're sharing that with us, right? They're not keeping that to themselves. They're sharing that with us. And they're showing that to us to show their strength and their resilience and who they really are. There's this one young woman, she's 19 years old, who was just about to go into her second year of undergrad school. She was studying literature at a university in Gaza, and her university got bombed. Now she's sending me her poetry and wanting to talk about it. This is a person who doesn't have enough to eat, and they're reaching out to this random person living elsewhere, sharing their poems and eager to talk about poetry. This is all happening all at once, and it is mind-boggling. I find it hard to get my mind around it. I don't really have any container for this experience of having a conversation on Facebook with a person who's in a live genocide and who has only eaten one meal that day, and that meal consisted of basically bean gruel, for me to be talking to them, there's all kinds of feelings that come up, but it's such a privilege, really, to have to grapple with these things.
It's such a beautiful reminder of how important connection is. I just notice myself in these times of grief that come in waves. I tend to isolate, and I don't really realize I'm doing it, but then I just get really worse off. And it's just, for me, coming up like such a beautiful reminder that even somebody in Gaza is reaching out and sharing their art.
Amazing, astounding, like unimaginable, absolutely fucking mind-blowing. And that's the privilege, to have one's mind blown that particular way. That's the privilege of this. This is like wisdom talking directly to us. It's just indescribably rich situation. And I'm just unalterably changed by it, and for the better. Absolutely.
I'm noticing that when I am isolating, I have a lot of resistance to practice. And when I finally do practice, it usually feels better. And this might be just so human run with me, but I'm like, why does japa work so well? Like, like, what is it? Like, why repeating this mantra over and over and over again just like unfolds or like unfurls these parts of me?
So it's the same way that when you put yeast into dough. Dough is heavy and sticky and cold. And when you put yeast into it, it becomes lighter and more porous and more receptive. Yeah. So that's one kind of way of thinking about it. But you are actually you have a vibratory aspect to your being. You are sound also. And everything in this tradition, one way of describing manifest life is as visible sound. So you have actually been spoken into existence, and you have this aspect of you that's made of sound, but it's dense. Mantra is lighter and more expansive and more connecting. So you're basically taking lighter, less dense, more connecting, meaning more access to wisdom or more embodying of wisdom sound, and pouring it into the dense dough of your symphony. And then you get lighter and you feel more connected. You're basically mixing the mantra into yourself. And then you feel more expansive and connected.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's how it works. Mantras are like wisdom bombs. But you are also made of the same thing as the mantra. The mantra's just further along toward wisdom than you are. So you're bringing yourself further into wisdom when you put the mantra in your body. That's why we have to do it so many times, because it takes a lot of times for it to start leavening our vibratory quality. This all sounds kind of scientific, but the end result is that we feel more connected, and we feel more intimacy with life, and we feel better. That's the end result. Think of I'm getting into this dough thing quite ridiculously. I actually just made bread this morning, so it's fresh in my mind. I made this really easy kind of bread. It only has a few ingredients. And I put it into a loaf pan, and it's just kind of like lying there, right? Impersonating dough. And then it starts to rise, and it rises up to the level of the edge of the loaf pan, and it's like, oh, now I can look around. And then you bake it, and it rises more, and it dries out, so it's not so woo. And then it gets to give itself to somebody else for nourishment. So it gets to be generous now.
Aw.
And it feels good. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.